back again. So first off, we're going to start with these basic paints that I got from my local craft store, WHSmith. You can get these pretty much from anywhere, the standard acrylic paints. They're not very expensive, so here we go. I'm just mixing some burnt umber, bit of green, tiny bit of green, and black. So you want to make this like almost like a dark brown, like really damp brown sort of color, because it's going to be our base coat essentially. And you don't want to fill out majority of the cracks when you do this. You just want to like put the top layer. If there's some black showing from the primer, that's okay, because you're going to use those as shadow effects later on. Okay, if it wasn't obvious already, I'm strictly using the brown for the wood areas. Now I'm mixing a black and white to make a grey, a bit of a light grey, because you don't want it really dark. Because what you're going to do now, for this effect, for the brick effect, you're going to just want to get some paint on the tip of your brush, wipe it off like I've done. This is called dry brushing. I'm sure most of you know this, but yeah, it's a dry brush. If there's not enough paint, put some more on there, but you just want to catch the highlights, because you already got a black primer on there. So you just want a bit of the highlights to just scrape on the top of the bricks or the stones, so that will just lift it up and make it look a little bit more realistic than if I just coated it all in grey. Right, next we want to get a tiny bit of black and add some blue in there. We're going to basically make a wash for the roof, because I wanted the roof to have a tint of blue into it. So I'm just making a bit of a wash there, and as you can see, it kind of turned a bit grey, so that didn't really work out very well, did it? But it's okay, because now I guess I'm using it as a base, so it's alright. And the next wash that I make, I'm going to add a bit more blue. You know what I'm saying? We like that blue. So this is a very good example of if you don't have enough, you just put some more. So what you want to do predominantly when you're painting most of the time, you don't want to just go straight up and just put a block color in there, because you can't subtract, but you can always add on, right? So yeah, just a little bit, not much, So once again, adding more blues to this, because I really wanted this roof to be blue or have a blue tint, but it wasn't working out. It just looked predominantly grey. So now that my brown base has set, I'm gonna go over with a normal brown with the orchid yellow, or just any yellow, to just lift the brown up a bit. So now you're gonna use like a similar dry brushing technique, but you don't need to wipe off so much paint, because you kind of want it to pop out a little bit more. So you just want to catch where it catches, and then just work that in. Catch mostly on the edges, because that color, remember, when you're working with some of these acrylic colors, it will slowly die down once it dries. It won't be as bright as you think it will be. Right, so here on the inside, I'm mainly hitting the middle parts. You want to leave your corners, so your corner shadows pop out even more, because you want to keep some mystery in the house, them dark corners in there. Alright, so just doing the same thing for the roof now, and yeah, this has been a bit of a learning curve. So what I'm doing now is mixing an even brighter brown. This time round, I'm making the brown even brighter, but this time I am using the dry brushing technique of wiping certain paints away, and then just literally just striking the edges as I go along to just lift them up even more. So this is technically our third and I think final application of brown, because the next one is just going to be highlights. But yeah, this is pretty much the last dry brushing coat you're going to do with the brown. Well, I've decided to do. You can go a little bit further if you want. But yeah, so again, focusing just on the middles and parts in the middles, and just again bringing out those main faces and edges, and then just leaving the dark corner bits to be dark, because you want to leave some of that dark, so it looks, you know, worn out and things like that, and it brings more character to the house. Right, so after we've finished applying it to the roof, we are gonna go ahead and grab some white and mix that in with the brown to make a very, very bright brown, almost like a weird milky chocolate color. So now I'm using that almost like a tan to highlight the worn out areas in the wood. So again, just predominantly focusing in the middle of the house to just lift it, and you can see slowly, I know my camera is not great, but you can see slowly it's lifting. And I'm using a very hard brush for this with frayed little bristles at the end, so it just, you know, it's not super clean, because you don't want this part to look a bit clean. Again, this is a nicer technique that I saw a lot of painters doing. Is you want to slap a little bit on your hand to just take it a bit off as you're working, so then you can kind of see exactly how much paint is left on there sometimes than doing it on the paper, for instance, because if you're doing it on white paper, sometimes you can't really see the contrast. Yeah, and again, using a tough brush, I'm using a smaller brush, but it's a bit more of a hard brush, and I'm using the same techniques but with a very light gray, a very, very light gray than the previous, to just bring up all the highlights on the bricks. Again, just focusing on the chimney areas, but you don't want to do this like everywhere. You want to leave some parts a bit dark as well. Right, now we're going to just do some washes, just add some water with some acrylic blue, and we're just gonna like wash that all over it. Yeah, like just be messy with it, it doesn't matter. You want it being a bit random as well. Just make sure you get a decent amount on there, and then you want to wipe it off with some tissue. Do the other side, same thing. You don't want it looking a bit too silly, so you don't want it to look super, super blue. You just want a little bit of the highlights from that. Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm gonna grab some of that blue and then just dab it on different parts of the bricks, just to give it a little bit of characters. You don't have to do this, but I don't like my stuff looking too uniform, so I'll break it up with a little bit of blue. Now adding a brown, green and black, I'm gonna add some water and make a wash. However, I shouldn't have done this after I put down the highlights, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyway and then redo the highlights later. So just adding some washes to areas where you want it to look a bit, you know, like mucky, and how it's collected dirt over the time, because I'm going for a bit of a rustic house, so I want it to look a bit dirty. So just hitting the corners and stuff. You don't really have to do this, but I wanted to give it again like some character to the house. And yeah, and pretty much you're done after this point. Yeah, so here's the big reveal. Enjoy.
What's up, y'all? Big Snoop D-O-double-G. I want to welcome y'all to my house, the dog house. Slide in. This the room where nobody get to kick it at. It's called the untouchable room. Touch on bases of untouchableism, you know, talking to my players. We have a proper little meeting right here, one player there, one player there. Meeting right here, one player there, one player there, one player there. Yeah.